Hello and welcome to A Bettor Morning, presented by Rival Fantasy. I'm Heather Klein. Rival Fantasy is the all-in-one fantasy sports platform. Let's welcome today's panel. Fantasy Alarm lead NFL analyst and host of Fantasy Fiasco, Andrew Coop Cooper. Award-winning host, the fantasy exec, Corey Parson. Senior Manager of Content for Fantasy Alarm and host of Quick Out Fantasy Football Show and Fantasy Alarm DFS shows, John Mpemba. Welcome, guys.
How we doing?
Let's go, John. Britt's been on a baseball heater, man. You're on the hot seat today, buddy.
Yeah, she's been good, huh?
Oh, yeah, she's been crushing, dude.
Smart.
She's been crushing. So you
John,
gotta give us a lineup today or something, man.
John from the Fantasy Alarm Studios.
Yeah,
You like my little background here? Listen, if it's not this, it's just a pure white wall, and it just doesn't look aesthetically pleasing. So, I created this little
That's not actually in your house?
Yeah. I wish.
Honestly, though, that would be psychotic.
I would like to have a nice little studio. It'd be cool to have a little bit more. We gotta look at rearranging this place and get a little more of a background, but this is where we're at.
Love it.
Yeah.
All right, let's get to it, guys. Cleveland Browns' Deshaun Watson confirmed that he will get the start against the Commanders in Friday's preseason game. Last season, he finished 3-3 in 6 starts, throwing 1,100 yards, 7 TDs, and 5 interceptions after he sat for his 11-game suspension. Watson didn't have a stellar end to the Browns campaign in 2022, but what do you hope to see from him tomorrow night and into the regular season? Oop. You're up first.
Yep. Here's the thing about Deshaun Watson that is different than some of these other situations. Like with Russell Wilson, and I like Russell Wilson, but I'm a little concerned that he was a system guy, that maybe Pete Carroll's just awesome because Geno Smith walked in there and rocked the house. With Deshaun Watson, I've seen this guy do it with a number of different coaches, a couple of them that we know are terrible head coaches. I've seen him do it with different weapons. I've seen him do it on terrible teams. The last time this guy was a full-time quarterback, the team went 4-12, and he was still amazing. He threw for almost 5,000 yards, right through 30 touchdowns, didn't throw double-digit picks, and was a Pro Bowler and was a top 5 quarterback. Virtually every time this guy has played, going back to his rookie year before he got hurt, he's been a top 5 quarterback. I expect this guy to come back, bounce back with the weapons he has, and arguably be a top 5 quarterback. So I'm in on Deshaun Watson in fantasy football for sure.
I really don't have much of a different take here. I guess if I had to say anything for their preseason game specifically, just don't get hurt, right? Just go out there, go through the motions, do whatever you have to do. I don't care if he doesn't complete a pass. I just want him to get out there, get his feet under him in an actual NFL game again, and just stay healthy. Because I do think for the regular season, a lot of people are taking that small sample size after he missed so much of last year or the prior seasons. It kind of held it against him. I'm willing to give him a pass, say he's getting back up to speed here, give him another full off season in the same offensive system. They added some weapons for him in Elijah Moore, and they drafted Cedric Tillman. I am a fan of Watson where he's going in drafts, and I do have some shares of him this season.
Yeah, I don't have any yet, and I'll be honest with you guys. I'm quite torn on this. You know what I'm saying? And maybe you guys can help me out when we get to the group discussion part. But, I'm kind of like, I'm not there, but you guys can pull me in. You feel what I'm saying? Now, with that being said, I think we need to apologize to Bill O'Brien because, we trashed him when he was the head coach of the Houston Texans. But for the most part, that team was going to the playoffs every year. Yeah, they was losing in the first round, but they were there. They were competitive. You know what I'm saying? So I feel as if this Deshaun Watson thing, he needs to play in the regular season. He looked, in the preseason, he looked bad last year. Yeah. It didn't look like rust. It looked downright bad. You know what I'm saying? But now, though, Coop, I caught another one last night. So this is what makes me torn, right? We talk about the rust with Deshaun Watson. Let's go 3 box. We talk about the rust with Deshaun Watson, right? But last night, I'm watching The Pivot, right? The Michael Parsons episode. And at the end of the episode, Ryan Clark is talking to Trayvon Diggs. And Trayvon Diggs is like, the guy that's the biggest problem is Calvin Ridley. And I was like, interesting, you know what I'm saying? He was like, the way Calvin Ridley runs his routes, he gets up on you too close, he sits down immediately. And that year off rejuvenated him. And he's like, well, Ridley should have a big year. And I'm like, well, okay, Watson. You feel what I'm saying? So I'm like, so that's why I'm torn. But I don't think I'm going to leave out the draft season with at least not one Watson team, even if he's a QB2 with a book.
His ceiling's too high to have no shares at where he's going in drafts right now. So, I'm not saying dive all in. I think that certainly depends on, your risk aversion to building your teams. But, Amari Cooper, being a great wide receiver for him and Watson's skill set, what we've seen of him at his peak, I think it is intriguing for where he's going.
It's fairly affordable to go high risk, double tap Watson and come back and grab double tap Watson with Anthony Richardson. That's kind of an interesting.
Well, he actually pairs up well with like Dak if you want to go save floor, right?
I'm not drafting him.
Now, I will say with Bill O'Brien, I spent a lot of time actually defending the DeAndre Hopkins trade, oddly enough, in that there was only like 5 teams that could afford to pay the guy. And you were basically trading for the right to make him the highest paid wide receiver in the league, which the Cardinals did immediately. What I couldn't defend were those Letterman jackets. You
could have also just paid the man. You didn't need to trade him. If they probably would have been better off giving him the money,
if they had just paid him. But
I
don't know.
He's DeAndre Hopkins, a locker room lawyer, and that's not going to work with like that Belichick tree. They don't deal with locker room lawyers.
I tell you, teams that have DeAndre Hopkins, from what I've seen, haven't won a damn thing, and he just got outright released by the team that traded for him without them winning a thing.
And then he had to go on a tour to end up with Tennessee,
which broke
my heart. Didn't have no market for him, right? Just really 2 teams. So
was actually for too much money for a player his age.
I agree.
All right, next topic, guys. It's fantasy football draft month, and we're here to get you ready. Start a free 7-day trial of Fantasy Alarm's All-Pro subscription and get the Fantasy Football Draft Guide and cheat sheet free. Go to fantasyalarm.com/draft. When drafting the first few rounds, it should be cake, but it's the middle rounds when it becomes difficult and the time clock seems to pick up speed. John, how do you approach drafting for your team in the middle rounds of fantasy football?
I mean, listen, it's all about your draft strategy, right? We always say, make sure you have a plan going into your draft, have the cheat sheet ready, have your draft tiers. And the middle rounds really are dictated by how you started your draft or whether or not you have a specific strategy in mind. I mean, if you're going 0 running back for your draft, more likely than not, you're addressing your other positions when you get into those middle rounds. You're still hammering wide receivers. You're getting your tight ends and quarterbacks, and you're waiting on running backs. If you went, hero RB early, your middle rounds are probably being now getting your wide receiver 2s and wide receiver 3s. So I can't sit here and say that there's like an exact way to go about or exact science to go about drafting in the middle rounds. But the only thing I have to say is you got to have a plan. You got to know who you're looking to target.
Yeah, I'm actually a little bit different than that, John. My thing that I've learned over the years and it kind of worked out for me is just to turn the computer on and see what happens. Because let me tell you something. The great King Scott Engel, our great fantasy king. Listen, he had a lot of crazy things he said, but you cannot predict the draft from his lips to God's ears. You cannot predict the draft. So you never know what's going to happen. You can go in there, and you should go in there with a plan, but you got to be fluid. You got to be able to move on your feet like Terrence Bud Crawford, you know what I'm saying? And not so much like Errol Spence, because that's how you get beat up. Now, what I would say is this. Loose and free plan, but be familiar with the draft board so you know who's here and there. Do your mocks, do your best balls, get yourself prepared so when the drafts do start going left on you, you don't start panicking.
I'm fully with Corey on that, being fluid, and that's why what you should do is learn all the strategies, learn all the the 0 RBs and the waiting on wide receiver, yin yang tight end, all those things, so that what you do in the beginning and the middle rounds dictates what strategy you pivot to. You never want to go in and say, I'm going 0 RB, but you can walk out of the draft and say, hey, I had to pivot to 0 RB based on what I did. In the early picks, I'm taking chalk. If you move Devontae Adams up to, your wide receiver 2 in your rankings, you're going to have him in every league. I personally don't really tinker with the top guys in ADP. It's the middle rounds where I go and get my guys. So I'm willing to reach a little bit for guys like Darren Waller, guys like Michael Thomas that I really think could be breakout players this year, a guy like Miles Sanders. So that's where I do a little bit more of reaching for upside in those middle rounds. And at the end, that's where I fill in where I'm weak. If I draft a ton of wide receivers early, I use the late rounds to get running backs. If I skip tight end until the end, maybe I'll take 2. That's the whole point of the late rounds, and that's what your bench is for. That's how you build a team that's balanced.
Yeah, I agree. Like I said, having a plan, but to your point, being able to be fluid with that as well. The whole part we have the cheat sheet for that reason, right? You go in with the plan. Maybe your guy gets drafted. You go look at the cheat sheet. You go see the Howard Bender rankings and draft grid. All right, who should I go with that fits the build that I've had right now? And you can go ahead and sort of build off of that and pivot where needed.
I got to ask the fantasy exec a question here because I said a name there during my 45 seconds or however many seconds it is today without the timer up there. If Corey's up, sometimes it's 4 minutes. But I got to ask you, fantasy exec. I said a name there, Michael Thomas. When that name gets said, the hair stands up on people's arms and some sort of notifications go off on Twitter because everybody can seem to find every Michael Thomas tweet to weigh in with their opinion. Where do you stand on the
I got a good homeboy. My man Kyle Mosley, he's at Saints camp. He's at Saints practice. He's in the facility every day.
You got boots on the ground over there.
Yeah, and he loves Michael Thomas. Again, you see what I'm saying? That's the problem. But he got me on Michael Thomas last year, and now he's trying to pull me back in again this year. And I'm like, Coop, I'm romantic. Like if you burn me one time, it's like I'm done. You know what I'm saying? But if you do good to me, I'm coming back. Michael Thomas haven't done well with Michael Thomas in a few years now, but at his price, it's worth it because you can put him on your bench and see what happens.
That's where it is for me too. This year and last year, he was draftable because you weren't drafting him to be your number 1 or number 2 wide receiver. He was going off the board as basically a wide receiver 3, and that's sort of the same case. And even later this year. And he got off to a hot start. Coop and I talked a lot about that last year. He had 4 touchdowns, 5 touchdowns? First couple of weeks?
3 in 3 games.
3 in 3 games.
Oh,
yeah. So, I mean,
pretty
the production was there.
Touchdown pace.
Yeah, the production was there for him, when he was on the field. It just got to stay on the field.
Yeah. And it wasn't
go ahead.
I was like, people act like he hurt his ankle and then hasn't played football for 3 years. First of all, he hurt his ankle that first year, and he played through it. He played in the playoffs, right? So he played that year. The next year is when he had the surgery and missed the whole season. And then last year he comes back, and it's not the ankle. He hurt his toe, and it wasn't even his big toe. It was the toe next to the big toe. Had surgery. I've seen the guy deadlifting a gazillion pounds on Twitter. I think that, you know what? If he's not hurt in August, then I'm not going to play Dr. Fortune Teller with this guy. I'm just going to give him a shot. And if he gets hurt again, then obviously, we're going to sit back and say, well, there you go. But if he doesn't get hurt and he's Michael Thomas, he could be awesome.
I think something stinks in New Orleans, though. If you can put a wager on which head coach would be fired first, I would actually drop a couple dollars on Dennis Allen. I don't think that he has the favor of that team. I think that people were very puzzled and upset that he never went back to Jameis Winston last year. So I think if they get off to a slow start, things can unravel quickly in New Orleans.
Yeah, he's definitely on the hot seat. If I could remove any one coach, it would be Arthur Smith. Not because I don't like the guy, not that I don't think he's a great football mind. I just free Kyle Pitts, man. Like I hate that the ground and pound, leather helmet football. I'm done with it.
Because I was in the draft the other day, right? I had the 3rd pick, and I was thinking to myself, okay, I'm not a big Christian McCaffrey guy. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna pull Bijan up to number 3. You know what I'm saying? And I step away. You know what I mean? To go get something to drink, a beverage. I come back. I'm on the clock. I look at the board and I see Justin Jefferson sitting right there. You never know what can happen in the draft.
Let's go.
All right, let's move on. Geno Smith had a fantastic season with the Seahawks in 2022. With 4,200 passing yards, 30 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, and led the league in completion percentage at 69.8%. Smith went on to win the AP Comeback Player of the Year award. Who do you think will have a breakout season in the NFL and be named Comeback Player of the Year in 2023?
No picking DeMar Hamlin.
Yeah, that's the rules. No picking
That's the
DeMar
rules.
Hamlin. Because DeMar Hamlin is the chalk right now, and obviously, you know what I'm saying. Everybody's happy to see his situation improving after that scare last year. But if you go off the board and go a little bit deeper down, there's a couple names that I would like to discuss. But I think there's a couple of guys that are live for this award. I think Tua's live for it. I think Russell Wilson's live for it. There's people betting on Trey Lance in this market. You can give me that money. I'll take that action. Listen, I think there's some interesting names. J.K. Dobbins at 150 to 1 is pretty interesting, and so is Odell Beckham. Cam Akers, but I'm not sure if the Rams are going to win enough. I got to do it, Coop. I hope I don't take your guy. But I'm going 80 to 1 Mac Jones. I think you get Mac Jones with an offensive coordinator that he's familiar with. Mac Jones' intelligence. Like I always say, whenever you talk about quarterbacks that people like, oh, he don't have no weapons. What does Mac Jones have? Taquan Thornton? You know what I'm saying? So, no. Mac Jones, bounce back year without no weapons.
Yeah, I love it, man. John loves it too. We're both Patriots guys here, so
okay.
We're not no arguments for all. You know me with the Mac Jones takes. I just sit back and I say, you know what, Corey, you make a good point. With this award, it's kind of interesting because they've been willing to give it to a wide variety of players. And for instance, last year, Geno Smith, what did he really come back from? Just being not that good. Right, exactly. So, guys like Russell Wilson kind of are on the table with that. I mean, I've seen him give it to, and you say like, oh, Calvin Ridley can't win it because he got suspended. I've seen Mike Vick win it coming out of jail, right? Like, so Calvin Ridley coming back from being suspended can absolutely win it. The guy that I think has the narrative and potentially the skill set, but there's one gray area that we have to hit on is John Mechie. This is a guy who missed the entire last season. He's coming back to potentially be one of the top targets on the Houston Texans, and he had cancer. That's why he missed the year. That's a storyline that people are going to like. The one gray area is that he has not actually played in the NFL. Last year was his rookie season. He missed the whole season. So is he really even coming back, quote unquote, if he hasn't played? That's the real question mark there. But, you can get him at like plus 2,800, plus 3,000. That's what I've seen. I think that might be worth it for me.
Yeah, that's a good one. I went with Javonte Williams here. I mean, all reports are that he's ready to go in camp. He's going to play in the preseason games. They're going to be having him ready to go for week 1. You want to talk about a guy that could immediately become one of the top players at the position in football this year, coming off of that devastating injury. I know you mentioned J.K. Dobbins, the injury that he had and how tough it was for him to come back. I mean, if Javonte Williams comes back and is the guy that everybody thought he was going to be before the injury last year, that was the guy that I was kind of keying in on here as that comeback player of the year, and someone that I think is a great value, and his ADP is rising, but still a great value in fantasy football. If it wasn't for that knee injury, we would be talking about Javonte Williams probably as like a late first, early second, and instead he's going 5th, 4th round right now.
Yeah,
that Mechie is a good one.
Yeah, it fits a lot of the narratives there, and just the fact that this guy, I mean, we haven't seen it yet, so the upside's there. But John, the pick you have there is the classic, the one that we should be thinking about in terms of this award, right? Like that's kind of what the award was made for. A guy blows his knee out, comes back, crushes. But in recent years, the narratives have gone off the rails, really.
Yes, a whole lot of different ways you can go. We just spent the first 10 minutes of the show talking about Deshaun Watson, and nobody said him.
Yeah, exactly.
But you kind of feel like they're not like, oh, wait a minute now.
that would be such a nightmare, though. But the thing is, Roger Goodell, like he's got a little bit of that Vince McMahon in him, right? Where doesn't he? Like where it's like, let's make the villains, let's make the news by any means necessary, right? Like if Michael Vick can win the award, then anybody, right? So I don't think that's crazy. I don't think it's necessarily crazy. And he is the guy that, that time of year when there's no news going, he'll drop that bomb.
Now, I can see that something like that being the case. And I like the Javonte Williams pick as well. I think this is such a fascinating market because there's a couple of people, like, for example, look at Von Miller. What if Von Miller comes back and lead the league in sacks? Then he's going to be a top candidate. You know what I'm saying? So, and then what if Sam Darnold does a Geno Smith on us? He gets the starting quarterback job in San Francisco and leads them, you know what I mean, to a division championship.
Wow. I'm trying to find Javonte Williams Plus 4,000. That's
I like that Williams one too.
Yeah. If he goes out there and does the things we think he is very capable of doing, and I'm bullish on a bounce back here from Denver in that offense, I think that there's a really good chance for that.
Corey, I'm with you on some of these though. When I go through and look at them, I'm like, you can send those directly to me. I'll be the house. Anybody wants to bet money on Foster Moreau at plus 3,000?
I'll take that action.
You can put it. There's no limit actually at this book on that particular bet. Limits. We're doing a special right now. Limits are off. If you want to bet on Sam Darnold at plus 3,000, no limits over here on this book.
Rival Fantasy is the all-in-one fantasy sports platform. Play challenges, fantasy book, fantasy bingo, plus season-long fantasy football. New users who sign up at Rival Fantasy get up to a $200 deposit match and a complimentary first play voucher. Go to joinrival.com/alarm. Today we are going to play the challenges game where two players go head-to-head and you choose which guy will score more fantasy points. John, let's see who you got.
Today's challenges here, looking at the MLB slate. First challenge option that they gave you Aaron Nola pitching up against the Washington Nationals, going up against Hunter Brown, going up against the Baltimore Orioles. I know common consensus here would be to attack the Washington Nationals and think Aaron Nola, given sort of his profile, would be the guy to pick in this spot. For me, I'm actually going to fade both of these plays here. Aaron Nola has not been pitching very well this year, and the Washington Nationals are actually kind of one of the more pesky teams in all of baseball. They just don't strike out, which means they put a lot of balls in play. When you put a lot of balls in play, sometimes that goes against the pitcher here. We've seen Aaron Nola in recent starts. He just got hammered by some pretty poor offenses. Kansas City Royals, Pittsburgh Pirates, two teams that have done damage against him. So for me, I'm going to skip this challenge here. I think it's too risky to go either way. Baltimore obviously has a pretty good offense, and they're run right going up against rookie Hunter Brown. So let's see what they give us next here. Back to Aaron Nola going up against Bryce Elder. I think in this instance, I would roll with the Bryce Elder side of things here. Going up against a Pittsburgh Pirates team that has some power. They have Brian Reynolds. They have Jack Swinski, who's really come on as one of the power hitters in that lineup. But Elder is one of the top 10 in quality starts this season. Again, I am just not bullish on Aaron Nola on this matchup against Washington. So for me here, I'm going to go with Bryce Elder as my challenges pick for this one. We'll just lock in a little bit of $10 bet that he'll have more fantasy points today than Aaron Nola. Give us another matchup here. Kenta Maeda versus Bryce Elder here. You can go either way. This one, the Tigers are another offense that lately starting to come on. Spencer Torkelson, Riley Green, Kerry Carpenter really starting to do some damage here. So though I like Kenta Maeda most starts out there, this one feels a little bit more of a risk. But there is certainly a chance that he would outscore Bryce Elder because of the strikeout. So I'll skip that challenge. See if we can get us another play here. I think I'll go Maeda over Hunter Brown. Again, the Orioles offense has been pretty strong. So we'll run Maeda over Hunter Brown today as our second challenge play of the day.
I like that you can skip them because some of these sites, it's like you get such a limited group to pick from. It's nice that you can skip through there and actually find matchups that you like.
Yeah, no, it's like you said, it's great. You have the opportunity, like you mentioned, to find and figure out the matchups that are best for you to go ahead and try to attack the board today. So this one right here, Paxton versus Elder. The Royals have been, again, one of the hottest offenses in baseball lately. They've done some damage against Boston starting staff. They beat up Aaron Nola on Friday evening here. Bobby Witt is becoming him. He was one of the top prospects in all of baseball for a reason. Now the stolen bases power, he's hitting over 400 the last 10 games here. And this is a team that actually hits lefties pretty well. So I'd be weary as a Red Sox fan today going with James Paxton here in this spot against the Royals.
Yeah, being a Red Sox fan, dude, that's something.
Yeah, I mean, they're in last place in the division, but they have like 5 games over 500. It's just one of the worst. It's the toughest division to be in right now.
Yeah, it's crazy. The division is wild. I want to ask you guys, because we haven't really talked about on this show, what are your thoughts about the Orioles announcer situation there with Kevin Brown, I believe his name. Did you guys see that?
Yeah. So somebody's been around the block a little bit, right? When everybody is going in one direction, something always says to me, something else is going on here. I'm willing to guarantee you this Kevin Brown thing is deeper than just that comment that he made that to get him suspended. I would guess that they were been telling him certain things in the back before, and I think they were probably building a paper trail on things that he said, and they used this one to give him the suspension. I doubt that it's just this one incident. I'm sure something else is going on there.
Oh, so Corey, you think it's a little bit, it's like The Wire here, where
I think it's something else. I think it's deeper.
I mean, definitely some broadcasts do not like when their analysts are being negative towards their team and their product. So the fact that he was like blatantly calling out that they just do not beat the Rays, they could have felt like that was being critical. The problem with some of these things, and it's the case of the Red Sox, is that the ownership group of the team owns the radio station, they own the TV channel, they own the newspaper. So controlling the media of your team, and you call the shots.
Another thing is that stat that he read was in the game notes, right?
Yeah.
But you don't have to, a professional broadcaster like that may not go off the game notes. That may be something for the pre. But what makes me know that they knew he was going to say that on air, because Mid-Atlantic Sports Network, they had a graphic with that stat on the graphic. Yeah. And if the graphics team make it, you damn well know it's going to run. You know what I'm saying?
And the thing is, other people have come out and said that they were suspended or their schedule was reduced for doing things as simple as bringing up good players that used to be on the Orioles. Like the ownership did not like them being like, oh yeah, we used to. Why can't we get guys like this? And I don't even think they said it like that. They're just saying, oh yeah, like this could, you might remember this name. He's having a great year. They didn't like that, and they apparently Kevin Brown. People were wondering why he did another game after that game. Did you guys hear the reason for that?
Why?
The other guy showed up wearing a shirt that didn't say Orioles on it, and they told him that's against the rules, and they pulled that guy and they put Brown in. So like they got some pretty specific rules over there about what goes on air and what doesn't, both audio and visual.
That guy Peter Angelos. You know how you're not New Yorkers, but James Dolan is the most hated man in New York. Right. Peter Angelos is probably the most hated man in Baltimore. Sure. He used to own a plant that had some asbestos problems, so he's not well liked.
I remember he wouldn't move a home game that they had against the Rockies. So the year
Ravens,
the Ravens won the Super Bowl, they had to start on the road and they lost that game. Denver. When you win the Super Bowl, you're supposed to get a home game, first game of the year, and Angelos wouldn't move a just random game against the Rockies.
It was the opener, and that's the game Peyton Manning threw 7 touchdown passes. That's the day when Fab went crazy and everybody went and grabbed what's the tight end that Peyton Manning had out there?
Julius Thomas.
Julius Thomas. Yeah, that was that game.
Yeah.
That game was supposed to be in Baltimore.
Right? Yeah, exactly, dude. Way to go, Peter.
That was today's edition of A Bettor Morning. Thank you to Corey, Coop, and John. Make sure you check out Real Time Fantasy Sports Show with Jeff Power and Logan Glazer. And if you missed any of our shows, you can find them all on our YouTube channel and at bettorsports.com. We wish everyone a better day.